Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply, and this video is to bring you a closer look at the Bommer number 5010-406-601. This is a plain bearing 5-knuckle, full mortise, wide throw, steel-based, removable pin hinge in a standard weight black finish. Let's dissect the part number a bit. 5010. The 50 is going to mean a 5-knuckle hinge from Bommer in a plain bearing sort of construction. There are no bearing packets there at all. It also means that the hinge leaf thickness is 130 thousandths, I believe. Let's double check that. Indeed, 130 thousandths of an inch leaf thickness. Okay. The 1 in the part number specifically means wide throw. That means that the hinge is wider than it is tall. It's rectangular in shape. Not all rectangular hinges are wide throw, but when they are wider than they are tall, it would be considered a wide throw. The 0 after the 1, 5010, means that this is a steel-based hinge. Okay, it's made of steel. Now the 406, that stands for the size. That means that this hinge is 4 inch tall and 6 inch wide. Okay, that is the case. Now the 601, that means two things. We've already demonstrated, and the first thing it means is that it's steel-based. The second thing that it means is that this is a bright black japanned finish. It is a black finish on steel base that has a semi-reflective sort of finish. You can certainly search the internet for a definition of the process japanning, or bright black japan, and you will find out what exactly that means, and that's what this is. Okay, this is, in essence, simply a wide throw hinge. What is a wide throw hinge? Well, a wide throw hinge is a hinge that allows you to account for an unusual door, wall, or frame condition. Okay, if this was a typical hinge, 4x4, the distance from, let's say, the edge of the hinge to the center of the hole would be 2 inch, would be half of the hinge. Well, imagine a scenario where you had an unusually thick casing, whatever dimension, or you had a deep wall condition and the frame was set far in, and when the door was closed, the latch bolt actually made contact with the frame, or the frame is installed, but then there's a drywall treatment or a wall treatment done such that it returns back to the face of the frame, and your latch bolt makes premature contact with that wall treatment rather than the strike plate of the frame. That would be a condition by which you might need a wide throw hinge. Or imagine if you had a door that was inset into the frame deeper than standard. When you stand on the pull side of the door and you run your hand over the face of the door and the frame, you'll notice that door, in most instances, but not all, is inset just slightly, like 3/32 of an inch. There are times when there are aluminum storefront doors, and those are flush. That's normal for many aluminum storefront doors. But in instances where you're probably going to encounter the need for a wide throw hinge, you'll be dealing with an inset that is greater than that typical 3/32 of an inch. Let's say it was 1 inch. I've seen 18-inch deep walls and frames that were indeed 18-inch deep, and the doors were set in the center of the opening, and sure enough, those openings had wide throw hinges on them. Okay, so that you could basically get the door not only to 90 degree, but get it open back and around the face of the wall. Or you could have a custom application in a kitchen where you had custom cabinetry, and all the cabinetry matched, and the cabinetry was extended onto the face of the appliances, and you had a pantry door that made it look as if you couldn't tell it was there. It looked like cabinetry. You could have a construction of all of that cabinetry that required a wide throw hinge. And if you're considering wide throw hinges, you might need to consider extended lip strike plates. These two items generally go hand in hand, of which of course we can help you with. So Bommer's wide throw hinges are sold as each. The 5010 is a plain bearing 5-knuckle full mortise. You can see from the swag on the hinge leaves there that when the leaves are brought parallel, they're meant to be mortised flush to the edge of the door and frame. That's full mortise. And it is considered standard weight. For a 4-inch hinge, that's going to be 130 thousandths of an inch thick. Basically 1/8 of an inch, just heavy. This is a non-rising removable pin. Non-rising means that once you tap this pin down, once your installation is complete, it will not have a tendency to work its way out, non-rising. And it does that by the fact that there's probably some knurling that might be on the hinge pin itself, or the fit is such that it's retarded from rising up into the hinge barrel, as you do see in many residential hinges. However, this hinge is still removable. You can insert a small tool into that hole and you can tap that pin out. And surely you're going to want to do that. When you're hanging the door, I like to get the frame leaf attached to the frame. I like to get the door leaf attached to the door, then hang my door into the knuckles, get a pin into the top and middle hinge, and then that door is hanging at least, and you can finish your installation. Now, there's a link below this video to a document called Cut Sheet. That cut sheet is very handy because it gives you an overview of not only the dimensional locations of the screws, which are classified as a term we call template. This is called the template pattern. Template pattern is defined exactly by those and only those dimensions. Any deviation from those dimensions for a 4-inch hinge, it's no longer considered a template pattern, okay? And that is just typical and common. So if someone says make sure the hinges are template pattern, this is what they mean. This semicircle, this half moon, or however you might describe it. I've heard it described all different ways. And speaking of those screws, you're going to get, pardon me, those holes, you're going to get screws in a complementary finish. Okay. Now, you'll see the dimensions of everything. You'll see the A dimension in the table below refers to or allows you to use this template for different widths of hinges, including those that are not wide throw, a 4x4. Now, you'll see the catalog number has 3 columns: steel hinges, brass or bronze hinges, and stainless hinges. The only difference in the part number is that last digit in the 4-digit initial part. 5010 is a steel hinge. 5011 is a brass or a bronze-based metal hinge. Where's the difference? Well, if you ordered oil-rubbed bronze, generally the base material would be a bronze-based material, and if you ordered polished brass, it would be a brass-based material. But regardless, the part number is 5011 rather than 5010. So it's a 1. And then if it's stainless steel, that part number is going to become a 5012. The next 3 digits are simply the size. You've got 406. That means 4 tall, 6 wide. Understanding the Bommer nomenclature by which they size their hinge takes a little bit of getting used to, and there's a link below this video to the manufacturer's page where you can pull up the full line Bommer catalog and you'll get to the ordering instructions and see how they do that. For instance, what is a 3.5 by 6? Well, it's 3, 5, 6, and so on. You'll see also the different rows. You've got your 5,000 hinge. That's just a square hinge. That's why you don't see any of the 4x5, 4x6, 4x7 sizes there. Your 5010 or your 5,000 wide throw, then it goes to an 8,000 hinge. That's just a typical hinge, but it's a 3-knuckle hinge. When you add the BB in front of any of those part numbers, and I'm not sure if Bommer doesn't manufacture them, but when you add a BB in front of the 5010, it becomes a ball bearing hinge. They ought to make an LB 8010 series as well, which is a ball bearing, but they call it lube bearing. It's a concealed bearing construction from Bommer in their wide throws, and I'm sure that they do. This cut sheet might just unintentionally omit that information. So you can see from there 3 different base materials. Then you've got 2 different knuckle constructions, plain bearing and ball bearing. Okay. Then lots of options in terms of security sorts of features. This hinge has no security feature, so you're going to use it for an interior door. If this was an exterior door that swung out, you're probably going to want to order it as a non-removable pin so that there's a set screw drilled and tapped here, and that when you tap or seat the hinge pin and then you tighten that set screw, which when the hinge is closed you cannot have access to it, sets itself, you tighten that set screw, it will go into a notch in the hinge pin, preventing you really from removing that hinge pin is the bottom line of why that's there. This hinge is available in lots of different finishes from Bommer, and lots doesn't really begin to describe the quantity of finishes because Bommer absolutely will entertain the idea of custom finishes, but the finishes that we have listed are 600, and that's prime coat. 601 is the bright black japanned. 632 is polished brass. 633 is satin brass. 639 is satin bronze. 640 is oil rub bronze. 646 is satin nickel. 651 is bright chrome, polished chrome, bright chrome. 652 is satin chrome, and all of those are, of course, on a steel-based material. It's inferred in the 0 in the 5010. It's also specifically inferred in the code for the finish, meaning if this hinge was a solid brass hinge with a polished brass finish, you'd have a 5011, but then your 632 becomes a 605. 605 is polished brass, but it means brass-based material. So I referred to earlier in this video the link to the manufacturer's page where you can pull up the full line catalog, and I strongly encourage you to do so, especially if you have more than an occasional need for hinges. What Bommer is really known for, not so much for their line of institutional commercial hinges that are typical 3-knuckle, 5-knuckle, full mortise, half surface, half mortise hinges and the whole ilk of commercial hinges. But it's their spring hinges. They're double-acting spring hinges in their 3029 series, or their single-acting spring hinges. They're lavatory hardware. They've got double-acting pivots that you'll see in their 7800 series, the 71 and 7200 series material. You'll see in courtroom doors, the little half doors that have the large spring assemblies on the bottom. That's Bommer too. The last thing I'd like to point out to you is the Bommer logo, and right above it it says Made in USA, a fact that Bommer is quite proud of, as am I to represent them. If you have any questions on the Bommer 5010-406-601 wide throw bright black japanned 4x6 hinge or any other Bommer product, please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you.